What's that? Do a quick overview of the domain itself. Obviously, the domain is b.ccsd.net. This is a change from people that have used it in the past. We are doing it's a domain where students and staff or members reside under one domain. So when you search names and search accounts, you will see students, and that's a change from what we're used to. Obviously, we use Interact for our emails, and we're used to only seeing staff in there. So when you search for a kid, probably first and foremost, you're going to want to make sure that you understand the naming conventions. That will help you distinguish between adult and a kid. Now, it does populate their name, as some of you probably are aware. Student name, student naming convention is a first name, dot person ID from Infinite Campus, and that first name's up to 8 characters. So one tricky thing there is 8 characters in Google World might mean 7 if there's a special character included. So what it does is it takes the first name from Infinite Campus. Whatever is in that first name field, some examples, example might be Anne Marie, as in 2 words, Anne space Marie, and then in that one field of first name, it will look at Anne Marie as one name. It will take out the space. Well, that would only be 7 letters. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, it did.
There are
Mark,
some.
Sorry to interrupt. Mark, can you mute your microphone? Because every time you tap something, it shows your screen instead of Lucas's desktop. And Mark looks like he might. Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Okay. So when there's special characters involved, Google looks at that as a character, but does not input it into a username, as there can't be any special characters in a username in Google. The default password for students is student ID number. For 90% of the kids, it's going to make them reset their password upon first login. Some will not, but most of them will.
Does it count dashes? You said it didn't count spaces, but
no dash. It doesn't count dashes. It doesn't count
hyphens,
spaces, or apostrophes is another common one in first names. So yeah, it doesn't count any of those special characters. AD login for adults, that's pretty standard. I get a lot of questions of I can't log in, it says it doesn't recognize it, and I say, well, what are you typing in? And they give me something that appears to be more of like an Interact login than an AD login, so I think that some people get confused with that or automatically just sign in with their Interact. Default password for adults is their employee ID number. You can find that in ess.ccsd.net or apps.ccsd.net and go to the job profile, log in, and go to job profile.
Lucas?
Yes.
As far as the AD logins, is there a way to change that? Because I've got a lot of female teachers that have changed their names, but their ADs never got changed.
Yeah, I believe you have to put in a request, a ticket into TIS.
Okay.
That's definitely a TIS question there. I know it can be done because people do it regularly. I just know there's a process. The good thing is it's routed to where they're not going to lose their Google account. It'll just sync up and it'll change their username when their new name hits, as far as their new username and AD.
Okay, perfect. So just have them contact the help desk.
Yeah. That's a ticket. Just submit it as a ticket and move forward. That's a good question. Domain structure. You see the image on there. Underneath every school has a generics accounts, sub-organization we'll call it, and a student sub-organization. This is very important as we get into making and creating generic accounts. They must be placed in that generic accounts. The generic account sub-org for each school is ignored. The sync ignores it essentially. So what you see is if you make an account in students or in a school's kind of root organization there, when the sync happens, it will not recognize it and it'll just suspend it automatically. As we talk, students and adults, they're all synced by AD. So I get a lot of questions of, can you create my Google account? No, I cannot create your Google account, nor would I. You need one if this is going to work for every individual. They're going to need one that's legitimately synced up with AD. I mean, we could create a generic account, but that's not going to follow them anywhere. So my answer is no. Just wait for AD to do it. The sync runs 3 times a day, I believe, at this point. But I do know that they're backed up in their world as far as doing HR transfers and those types of things. So if you have a teacher that's transferred in to a school, there's a good chance that they're still being suspended every day, and that'll continue until the sync recognizes it as being there. This is what when you log into the admin console, this is what you see under users. Okay, you got obviously the Omni box in the top, search for users. You type in people's names and populate there. Just remember that if you start typing in Mark, looking for, Mark Oakton, you're gonna get every Mark in the district, every student that has an account, every teacher. So it only shows, I think, up to 8 going down, and then what I search by online, what I search by is what I guess their AD account. I try to guess what that could be. I start typing the first 5 letters of their last name, and that seems to work better.
I wish you could drive so I could send you to get Denny.
So if that makes sense, so if I was looking up Mark Oakton, I would start with OAKDE, and then knowing that there's not a lot of people that are going to have that as a first name, but it will read that as a username. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what I would do in that case. You can click on the training one there. That's a username. You can see user information, and then obviously you have the little button down below. Click there to add users. So when creating, when we're looking at account creation, I should say, excuse me, student staff, they're created by AD. There's nothing we can do about that. That's what the sync's for. It's designed to be there, and so that's what we do there. So what really the accounts people are creating, they're called, dummy accounts, generic accounts that aren't tied to people. So maybe you have a club, a student council, a basketball team, a DECA, whatever organization you think you might need account for. Controllers have the ability to go in there and create those. They're going to want to make sure, as I said before, that they're in that generic account kind of organization, or they'll be suspended automatically, and they'll be really frustrated as to why that happens. When you look at changing student passwords, you have 3 options, really 2 options, and then a third option. So you can type in a password, or you can have it auto-generated. And then, so between the 2 of those, I would always encourage people to type in a password, not auto-generate it. Remember, you're going to have to tell this person what that password is. My rule of thumb is if I reset passwords for staff at this point, and I always use Clark County for the password reset. So to me, it's quicker, it's easier. You guys would know that. If in a building, if they just know that it's, the name of the school or whatever they choose to do as a standard, say, hey, I reset your password, and then there's no, well, it's $%, question mark, all these random symbols that it would auto-generate, and then the change of password to next login, I would always select that. You're just giving, when I reset a password, I'm just giving them a password for them to log into, and then I force enable that to make sure that they have to log in and change their password as soon as they log in. What a user profile looks like, some of the things you can kind of see from it, and we'll get more into that. If you look at this gray box, it's cut off a little bit, it goes across the top, and you'll see that off to the side you see these options. And the good thing about Google, obviously, is it changes. It's recently changed from this image actually this week, so here's another update in my presentation. But you'll see a lock just to the side of the arrow with the little guy. Just to the side of that, you'll see a lock with a circle around it, and that's for reset passwords. So the resetting password is pulled out of this menu that you see it in now and put off to the side, and then you click on that, and then when you click on that, it opens up this bottom window there where it says set password or auto-generate password, and that's what that looks like. Suspending users is interesting. I'm not sure when you would suspend a user, because the problem with suspending a user is once you suspend him or her, you cannot access the account. So if you suspect something, if you suspect something that the kid's done, or you want to search it for some level, and you go in and suspend it right away, you're not going to be able to see anything. So really what you ought to do is probably go in and change the password to something very secure to where that kid cannot get in. So basically you've locked the kid out. Then you can keep the account active. The kid can't access it. So then you can go in and kind of run your investigations accordingly. For staff password resets, that's one thing, because staff and students do not reside in the same organization. Google controllers do not have access to change the staff passwords in their building. So here's a link in this presentation. It's right there on the screen, where it's just a quick Google form. It has some other options in it as well, as like shutting off apps. Some of the core apps you can shut off if you want for your organization. Those types of things, you'll use this Google form to submit to me on those. Additional information in the profile, you can see how many services, account information. You see the groups. Now, the naming convention on the groups is very important to us. We want to be able to make sure, not that we care how many groups you have or what groups you're creating, but, for example, we had somebody create a period 2 group. So it's period 2 at nb.ccsd.net, and there's a whole bunch of period 2, so I could see some kid trying to, well, I'm in period 2, let me go log in there, and it's going to be one big mess. So we're kind of requiring schools to use a 4-digit location code, and I get the question all the time of, well, my location code is only 3 digits. Just humor me. It's 4 digits really in Google's system because all of them have a 0 in front of it. So I would just like to keep that uniform. And then put a dash, and then really whatever the name of the group is. I mean, it can be as extensive or as as big or small. But know that if you go 0933 -2, then that's the only period 2 that school can have as a group. This is what the user profile looks like. Pretty simple there. Aliases are interesting. You can create aliases. I wouldn't get too crazy on aliases, just because I'm not sure exactly why a student feels like they have to change get a new email address. What it does, it gives them a secondary email address to use. But I know some people are using it. And then if you want, every school has the ability to have apps, customized apps and services according to what they want. So I had a request today to shut off Hangouts in an organization. And so I went in, and through this survey they submitted that to me. I get it in my inbox, and I go in and change it and turn those apps off for those organizations. Questions so far? Okay. So when we say apps, here's the enabled apps that we have really available at this time. And remember that when a school receives access, they get access to all the apps, kind of out of the box, as they say. We give them access. Everything comes on. So the request would be to shut it up, turn it on, not to turn it off. Excuse me, not turn it on. So don't feel like you have to say, well, I want Calendar and Drive and Gmail and all these on. The request coming to me should be, hey, I want this off. Or if something you turned off, then you could request it on, obviously. And then same with the services. I went through and shut off some of the services where we have about 40-something enabled. I want to say, if there's one that I haven't enabled that a building wants, I'm fine with enabling it. The one I will not enable myself ever is Google Voice for kids. What it does is it gives you basically a cell phone number attached to your email account that really nobody has to know. Nobody really knows about. So I wouldn't do that. It would take somebody much higher than me to get it turned on, but we could probably get it turned on if they wanted it. Going into Google Vault, that's the e-discovery tool that Google uses to do searches and investigations, those types of things, or to search, really anything. We always equate Vault to a disciplinary action, but we had an instance in NVLA when they had their own domain where there was a document that needed to be changed, but nobody knew who owned it. Nobody knew who the real owner was. Everybody was a copy to it, but they couldn't seem to find out who created the document. So they ran in and they created a matter in Google Vault and found the owner of that document and then transferred ownership. So there's a lot of other reasons why. There's other reasons why you could use Google Vault. We always say disciplinary is really what we always kind of mention, but Doesn't have to be that type of thing. So in Vault, what you create what's called a matter. You know, you name it. You can describe it. I would describe it something, you know, something that describes it obviously, but keep it professional. Not sure at what point people may see. Those aren't forward-facing or public-facing records at that point, but they could be subpoenaed at any time. And this is kind of what it looks like when you go in. You can pick what data you want. You know, what the source of the data. Right now, it's really Mail and Drive that they're at. Although I do keep hearing that Hangouts and other things over there are coming on board. So I would suspect that more things would be added to that. Type the accounts in, dates, terms, those types of things, and you can perform your search. Questions?